Today we're talking about natural treatments for constipation, bloating, and slow motility. And this is targeted herbal medicine. It's a case study, a nice simple one where I recommended some herbal medicine, some prebiotic fibers, and some probiotics to a patient I was working with. She was doing everything right, living a really healthy lifestyle, great diet, good social connections, everything was right, but she was still dealing with that constipation piece. She'd worked with a few different practitioners, she'd tried to treat a few things on her own, but really wasn't seeing the sustained benefit that she was looking for. And so, this is an interesting case study because I didn't recommend testing, which is unusual, and thought because she's so vital and so young and so healthy that she just needed a little nudge in the right direction with some targeted herbal medicines to get everything kind of clicking and moving as it should. So with this patient, I was suspecting methane SIBO or EMO, intestinal methane overgrowth, and you can learn about the differences between hydrogen dominant and methane dominant SIBO here. It's pretty easy when you know the lay of the land to kind of pick which one. They're very kind of opposite. Hydrogen dominant SIBO is kind of pedal to the metal, loose stools, quite reactive. Methane dominant SIBO is very sluggish digestion, constipation, stuck, things weren't moving. And that was this patient's presentation. So we're going to be covering the herbs that I recommended and why, but remember that this is for this specific patient. This formula changes every time, right? There's no set formula. Different amounts, different ratios, different herbs, specific to the individual in front of me, and this is education only. So you can use some of these herbs, talk to your prescribing practitioner, find a herbalist that works with these herbs and bring them into your life if you need some support on that constipation and the bloating and the slow motility, that sluggish digestion. So with this case, we are working with herbal tinctures. I love herbal tinctures. Most of my patients that can tolerate herbal tinctures are going to get a big bottle of herbs, and what we have here is an extract of whole herbs extracted into alcohol and water, and the ratio of alcohol versus water differs depending on the herb we're talking about when we're actually manufacturing these herbs in the clinic, and it can range from about 25% all the way up to about 50 or 60, that's pretty typical, all the way up to 90% for something like ginger that needs high alcohol to actually extract those constituents into liquid. The reason why I love herbal tinctures, they taste terrible. I can't make them taste good. I've tried, they just taste really bad. It's quite a shock when you try them for the first time. People tend to kind of get used to them, and actually most people tend to look forward to them and enjoy that little kind of hit of herbs, but initially it can be a bit of a shock. And the reason why I love them is because they get results, and I think the reason there, I'm kind of hypothesizing, I've been thinking a lot about this, but I think the reason there is because the active constituents in the plant have already been extracted into liquid. Your body doesn't need to digest and extract those constituents in the digestive tract. And this is very specific for digestive disorders, which is what I treat, right? That's what I specialize in. That's what I'm passionate about. That's what I like to help people overcome. And someone with a digestive disorder, whether they're bloated, distended, gassy, abdominal pain, they have compromised digestion, so they're going to have trouble breaking down whole herbs and extracting those constituents that would get them better. Tincture bypasses all of that. It's ready to go. It can live on your shelf for years. It's preserved in that alcohol. You'll be whipping through this in about a month, maybe 6 weeks at the most, and we would be looking for significant improvements with a chronic complex presentation, which is not this case study, but with a chronic complex presentation of years of dysfunction. I would be looking for minimum 25 to 30% improvements on their symptoms within that first bottle. If we're not getting those improvements, we're not using the right herbs, or there's something we're missing, whether we need to do some testing, Again, with this case study, we didn't do any testing, which is very, very unusual. It might happen once or twice a month, and we just rolled straight into the recommendations that I'll be sharing now. So the first herb that I recommended in our herbal formula was a herb called or Immature Bitter Orange, and this is a herb that we get from the Chinese medicine Materia Medica. They've been using this herb for thousands and thousands of years. It kind of keeps cropping up in the classical Chinese formulas, and they would use it to regulate and direct qi throughout the body and the digestive tract. On the Western herbal front, and even when we look into the science of of Immature Bitter Orange, I would use it as a very strong prokinetic, meaning it stimulates gut motility. Why are we using a prokinetic here? The patient presented, she was constipated, she had sluggish digestion, she was bloated. I suspect that her transit time, mouth to toilet bowl, was a lot slower than it optimally should be, than what a healthy transit time is. Kicking that digestive tract into gear, getting ahead of those bacterial overgrowths that I suspected she has, and we're going to talk about that in future herbs as we get to them. That is a primary directive. That's what we're trying to do as a primary goal. Number 2 herb was turkey rhubarb. This is one of my favorite herbs, just again to kick things into gear and to get ahead of that constipation piece. It is a moderate stimulating laxative, which means that we don't want to rely on this herb long term. And the other really big piece there is if we can get away with lower doses, great. And we also want to phase people off of this herb kind of as quickly as we can. I will use this herb short term for constipation, methane SIBO, motility disorders, and more. So why are we including turkey rhubarb? Again, she was constipated, slow motility, bloated. It's got those anthraquinone glycosides, so the stimulating laxatives. Most people know senna. This is nowhere near as strong as senna. Senna's kind of too strong for me to use. I've never used senna. I've never needed to use senna. Next level down would be like aloe vera and cascara. I will use those if I have to. And then next level down would be turkey rhubarb. So it's a pretty moderate stimulating laxative. I'm comfortable using it for a month or two when we have to. But then the other benefit of turkey rhubarb is that it is also full of tannins, right? And we've got good data showing that tannins can take on the methane bug. And I was strongly suspecting methane. I said, look, you're doing so well, you're vital, you got a good diet, you got a good lifestyle, you just need a little nudge. Let's save the $200 on breath testing, which I rarely say. She was also a student. And let's roll it into a herbal tincture and see where the benefits are. So I'm pretty much treating her for methane SIBO and using turkey rhubarb to kick the gut into gear, get the bowels moving, and then take on that methane bug head on. Now the third herb in her tincture was ginger. You might be getting a bit sick of me talking about ginger, but most of my digestive formulas are going to contain ginger, so we'll talk about it now. Ginger is an antioxidant, it's a circulatory stimulant, it's an antimicrobial as well, but we're really using it for that prokinetic action. We've got great data that's been well studied on the stomach, right? So it can stimulate motility in the stomach. If you're dealing with any of that gastroparesis, meaning that your stomach is actually holding on to food longer than it should, ginger is huge. Really big symptoms there would be things like nausea, feeling excessively full after meals. That reflux piece can be part of that gastroparesis. But we do have a few other studies. It's not so conclusive, but I see good benefit in the clinic, so I'm using ginger. It's safe and it's effective. That's all I really need to know. I've got a few other studies showing that ginger can actually speed up intestinal motility as well. Fourth herb, we're including clove at a low dose. I've talked about clove before. I'm a big fan of clove. It's very pungent. It's very hard to take. It's for the robust patient who can tolerate that quite kind of intense flavor. And again, that's why we went low dose there. You can check out a past video on clove here. But just as a quick little recap, clove is an antioxidant, it's an anti-inflammatory, and it is a potent, it's a carminative, and it's a potent antimicrobial. I will use it for bacterial overgrowth. I will use it for fungal overgrowth. I will use it for parasitic overgrowth, and I will use it for that methane presentation as well. So herb number 5, we've got cinnamon, Cinnamomum verum, or true cinnamon. It is not a close herbal ally to me. I'm a little bit biased. This is the one herb that I can't tolerate. It gives me headaches for some reason, so I haven't gone deep on this one, but I will turn to cinnamon when it's indicated. It is a potent carminative, meaning that it can help with that gas and that bloating and the burping and the abdominal pain, get those bowels moving. It's also an antioxidant. It can support that allergy axis. And the other really big indication here is for glucose management. It's really helpful to help regulate your blood glucose. Really what we're turning to here is cinnamon as an antimicrobial with a secondary action as a carminative. There are definitely stronger carminatives, but it's that 1-2 hit, antimicrobial, killing bugs, and dealing with a lot of that gas buildup as well for this patient. As an antimicrobial, cinnamon can take on a whole raft of bacterial overgrowths. The really big one that jumps out at me, it can be really hard to shift in some patients, would be E. coli, Pseudomonas, Salmonella, Proteus, Enterococcus, Bacillus. I mean, the list goes on, and also some pretty potent and direct actions against that methane overgrowth. So far we've got 3 herbs to kind of kick the gut into gear. We've got Jia, turkey rhubarb, and we've got ginger, and we're moving into those antimicrobial herbs, all in one formula to get the bowels moving, get the motility moving, get the bloating down, and then deal with that root cause, which would be a suspected methane overgrowth in the gut. Now, before we go on, hopefully this is helpful. If it is, remember to subscribe below. If you're living in Australia or New Zealand and you're dealing with digestive health issues, then consider working with us here in the clinic. There's going to be a link in the description below. Okay, back into the formula. Number 6 herbal medicine in the tincture was fresh oregano, and this was definitely a choice. We have the choice between oregano leaf, and we can either do a fresh tincture, meaning they have made the tincture with fresh herbs, so fresh oregano, they haven't dried it, or dried herbs. The fresh herbal tincture is potent. Tastes like you're drinking oregano oil. It is very hard to take, and it is definitely for the robust vital patient. Not everyone can tolerate it. Normally I'd opt for dried oregano leaf, which isn't quite as intense but still super effective. And when we really need to kick up that antimicrobial action, oregano oil. I like to keep oregano oil in the wings unless I suspect, look, you need momentum quickly, so let's bring it in, work with the oregano leaf and the herbal tincture, and just see if we can get some sustained improvements on your symptoms. So if we're talking about the antimicrobial actions of oregano, there's a little bit of a theme going on with this formula. All of the antimicrobials are rich in those essential oils. You've got the eugenol in clove, you got the cinnamaldehyde in cinnamon, and in oregano you've got cavicriol and thymol, and really these are monoterpenes that can make up 78 all the way up to 85% of the essential oil in oregano. So it's really the standout active constituent, the antimicrobial in oregano leaf. Now these two monoterpenes are quite lipophilic, meaning they are attracted to the bacterial cell wall. They can actually disrupt the cellular wall in the bacteria, and anything that can disrupt the cell wall is going to be potently antimicrobial, antibacterial. So the last herb that I included in this herbal formula is a herb that I doubt you've ever heard before. It is a very popular qi tonic in the Chinese materia medica called Attractaloides. And so in Chinese medicine, they're using Attractaloides for a spleen qi deficiency mainly. I mean, there's other things that they use it for. Now, when I'm using Attractaloides, I'm thinking of it as an adaptogen. So it's in the same class as things like ginseng and cottonade phalaenopsis and astragalus. There's a whole bunch of other ones on the Western herbal front. Siberian ginseng, rhodiola, withania is a really popular herbal adaptogen. And Attractaloides is a very specific herbal adaptogen that has an affinity for, that can support the digestive tract. So if there's any stress on the system, stress in the digestive tract, Attractaloides is a really big one here, just to help nourish and build up that patient's vitality. Now on the science front, we don't have a whole lot of data yet on Attractaloides. It's still preclinical and animal studies, but we do have some data showing that it can help heal up the gut lining, rebalance the microbiome, so that's like an affinity for the digestive tract. It can also help to decrease inflammation, and the really big piece that I'm quite excited about is that it's got some neuroprotective effects as well. So if you haven't heard about Attractaloides, you've heard it here first, and I would not be surprised if in the next 5 to 10 years this really makes a play on the world stage. This is an unexplored and untapped herbal medicine with a lot of value. Withania, that's ashwagandha, that's blown up, curcumin, that was 10, 20 years ago. Medicinal mushrooms, there are all these big kind of fads and themes as we kind of discover the value of these herbs. Attractaloides, I think it's going to be a big one. So with the Attractaloides dose, we just topped up the bottle. It was about 60 ml of a 1 and 2. So she was working through 30 grams over the month, 6 weeks. It's not a lot of Attractaloides. I wouldn't be looking for it to be doing much heavy lifting, but as we get that momentum, we can pull back on some of these more stimulating herbs, jusha, turkey rhubarb, ginger, some of the antimicrobials, and we can really increase that Attractaloides amount ongoing, just to really help to tonify and build up that vitality in the digestive tract and the patient globally. So we checked in after she finished her first bottle. We had her on some prebiotic fibers and some probiotics, and she had seen an almost complete resolution in her symptoms. Her bowel movements were on track, her bloating was down, her motility had picked up. She was pretty excited, and I was too. Methane SIBO can be very stubborn, and I've got this methane SIBO case study, very stubborn case study where he wasn't getting any momentum, different herbs, different recommendations. You can check that out here.